Welcome to the show, everyone. We have Joey Madia joining us again to explore the paranormal culture of Japan. As a paranormal investigator that pursues parallels and patterns, this was a topic that was perfect for his passions and absolutely wanted to have him come on the show to help us with that expertise. Prepare to learn about all things paranormal and spooky in Japan.
Welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name is Craig, along with Austin and Chris.
Passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Let me out.
I'm afraid that is why justice and honor in Massachusetts colony?
All right. Well, like I said, we're still going to be short, Austin, until end of May, June, but we have brought on the third beard. Joey Madia, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm honored to be here. I think this is number 5.
I think so. It's a few, but at the same time, it's not enough. You know, it's like I said, always like having you on the show. That's what it's kind of a nice get together. I mean, I think Chris needs to have a face that doesn't look like he's upset. There you go. Here's all serious and thought there for anybody that wasn't watching it. It looked like, and Joey's with us.
He's just gearing up.
Yeah. So this has been a topic I have wanted to cover for a long time, and I've been trying to just kicking it around, and we finally, worked out. Joey was really interested in this, and so we were able to pull the trigger on it, because we're going to cover Japanese ghosts, demons, and the Aokigahara Forest, otherwise known by a lot of people outside of Japan as the Suicide Forest. Yeah. And Chris will join us back in. I think he hit the wrong button and deleted himself, so he'll join us here shortly again. But yeah, it's definitely one of those. I mean, because everybody's knows a little bit about, if you've watched anime, if you've watched Japanese, any type of Japanese television, the paranormal is so prevalent in this culture. And so that's what I said. I mean, so I don't care. I mean, where would you like to start? I mean, there's not really there's not really like, well, this is the natural starting point.
Well, no, not really. And we could start with the forest and go from there. But so when you asked me to do this, I was excited because my daughter Jolie has loved all things Japanese since she was on. What's that? Not sure what's.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so.
No, keep going. Keep your enjoying.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. We apologize to our radio audience because it's getting confusing.
Yeah, Chris is having technical difficulties. He'll get in.
My daughter has loved everything Japanese, so I've kind of had a secondhand thing about it. But I did watch some things on Aokigahara Forest. And it's one of those places like Skinwalker Ranch or Point Pleasant, West Virginia, that I've studied a lot, because it has all the different components, and it helps us ask questions. There you go. There it is. And probably that sign warns people about certain things.
Yeah, this is actually, for anybody that doesn't read Japanese, it's a loose translation, but it's basically for suicide help and prevention, go to this, call this number, go here for help. There's other ways, it's just basically, it's a suicide prevention thing, because this one, man, I mean, if you did not know about this before, I mean, wait till we kind of cover this a little bit, because I think it was I want to say it's 2011, 2012 is when they stopped reporting suicide numbers, because they felt it was promoting it as a location to go to.
Right.
And they were averaging 50 to 100 bodies that they would find every year out there in the forest.
That's about right. And that's going all the way back to the 1960s. In 2010, the year before they stopped reporting it, more than 200 people attempted suicide there. And 54 succeeded, if that's not a disrespectful word. But I don't think so. So here's where I go. So there's hanging, there's drug overdose. They go into the middle of the forest. People find their clothes. They find shoes. They find these different things. There are memorials scattered throughout the forest to those who have committed suicide. The suicides increase in March, which is the end of the fiscal year in Japan. So you have a culture where success, going up the ladder, providing for your family, getting perfect marks, there's way more of that than in America. And America has its own numbers of suicide. So I don't want to say that. But if you figure that in, that doesn't feel supernatural. That feels like we have a place that for the past 50 years, this is where people have gone to kill themselves. It's been highly publicized. There are at least 2 movies about it. There was a 2015 movie in 2015, The Sea of Trees with Matthew McConaughey and Naomi Watts. And in 2016, they did a horror film called The Forest. And I always have mixed feelings when you do a horror film based on a true paranormal event, right?
Yeah.
So Blumhouse is famous for it. What they've done with Ed, Lorraine Warren, right? I just watched, was it The Devil Made Me Do It?
Mm-hmm.
It had very little to do with the actual case. So I have mixed feelings about that. Of course, it was highly publicized in late 2017, early 2018. The YouTube influencer Logan Paul showed a picture of a body in the forest. It was a huge, rightfully so. It was a huge controversy. So the Japanese government is going out of their way to try to stop this, because suicides breed more suicide. So I know in America, when a teenager commits suicide, there's always a big debate. Does this make the news or does it not make the news? Because it puts ideas in people's heads. That was the first part for me. Was just, okay, they tend to go up in March. It has this huge reputation. I mean, it's called the suicide forest.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you go to commit suicide? You go to the suicide forest. I don't want to get weird, but at the end of my life, if I'm breaking down and I'm not going to obviously be in a hospital or a hospice or something, I want to just go into the forest and stop eating, stop drinking, and kind of go. So I understand that on that level. So I guess that was my initial reaction when I started looking into it.
Yeah, and one of those things, like I did through the research on the Aokigahara Forest too, is where it's located at. It's the northwestern part of Mount Fuji.
Yeah.
And so it's what it's done because of the volcanic soil and the way it's developed. It's an eerily quiet forest. And so you go there because of it absorbs sound so well that a lot of people attribute this to paranormal. It's when it's actually, it has more of a natural effect, but it also has that effect when you go out there, you're at peace. And so a lot of people think of distress, but people forget about, there was the tradition of even the samurai. The name's failing me, samurai sword, you're not going to get captured. You kill yourself. This is So there's a few people that go out there because it's a way of honor. They're actually able to go out there and almost meditate. And that's where drug overdose or something like that is, because they go peacefully, basically just take a nap and they just become one with the forest, and they take that. And that's where it has a whole different, aspect to it. And it's, so in a way it's creepy, but at the same time, it's just, there's also an air of reverence. Like you go there because you're basically going through a graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
But did you read about the caves, the ice caves?
Yes.
Those...
In winter they fill with ice, and that's a huge tourist destination. So you have these people passing through who are getting a sense of the place. I'm glad you brought up Mount Fuji, because I always like to bring all of this back. Like, on one hand, it's like, who the hell is Joey to talk about this Japanese stuff? But I look at it in the context of a paranormal investigator, parallels and patterns. So I won't say I've exhausted the American literature and all of that, but I've been doing this for 12 years. Plus, I've been in the field a ton. So interesting. Mount Fuji actually translates to deathless. Mm-hmm. So there's this lore that the volcano, which it is, although it hasn't erupted since 864 BC.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, but that it holds the secret of immortality. And there are stories about it. There's a story from the 10th century, the tale of the bamboo cutter. So it has this, okay, on one hand, we go here to commit suicide, but on the other hand, this is a place of immortality. So that's interesting. So what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that the soul will be eternal? And is that where we overlap? I don't know if we're quite ready to get into ghosts, but there's all this interesting ghost lore that's attached with the forest. Like, it's filled with ghosts, and these ghosts not facilitate, but may have to do with the suicides as well.
Yeah, and that's no, I agree, and I think that's part of the thing too, is especially with you, a paranormal investigator, and you and Tanya have done that, and that's a lot. And I think you guys would probably, if you go around, anybody that does like cemeteries, anything that's around there seems to be a higher activity rate, especially if there's, and that's pretty much what this forest is. And so if you have, just normal, just not even haunting, just, these lost souls that are wandering around, you're going to have that. Well, then, that turns into, do you have that, the grandma, the grandpa, the uncle that's just lost, or do you have that person that is the mischievous one that is basically considered, I think it's the onryo, or the yurei, I think it's yurei. I apologize, my Japanese is not the best. Yeah, I
right.
But that's, yeah. And so, you get into those, and I said, I guess that's probably a good segue to start getting into some of these things, but that's
right.
I could see where those two would come across, where somebody would mistake something out there for the demon, for the ghost, when in fact it's just, just that normal spirit that's saying, hey, I'm here. Hi.
And that's where your state of mind, your intention, your frequency, that's what Tanya and I talk about. We were on a couple of shows last week. That's what we were talking about. You have to be conscious of your intent, because what you put out there, that's what you're going to get back. That's what you're going to connect with. Mm-hmm. Now, the forest, before we move on from the forest, there's a couple of really interesting things. You mentioned one already. Because of the dense, porous lava rock, it absorbs sound. So it's a quiet, ghostly quiet place. Another thing, though, is, and this is a misconception, but there's an idea that the paranormal makes a compass spin.
Mm-hmm.
Lava has, let me get this right here. The lava does have its own magnetic properties. So if you place it where there's magnetized, material, of course, you're going to get the compass to act weird. So that's one thing, of course, as paranormal investigators we do. But this is very tantalizing to me. The role of infrasound. So there are two things that scientists try to say when they try to disprove that the paranormal and ghosts and all of that exists. One is that during thunder and lightning storms, there's a higher electromagnetic charge, and they've done tests. They've hooked people up. They tend to hallucinate. They tend to think they see ghosts, dead people, demons, all that kind of thing. The other is the fact of infrasound. So infrasound, to the scientists out there, the curious, is low frequency sounds vibrating from 0.1 to 20 hertz. This is real low stuff.
Mhm.
And the forest has been measured, and there's a pretty good instance of infrasound. And this infrasound could mess with people's minds. So now you got the cart and the horse. Are people going to the forest and through infrasound or the perception of ghosts, all of a sudden are killing themselves? Or are they going to the forest with the intention to commit suicide? Based on the data, I think it's the former. Or the latter, rather. They're going with the intention to end their life. The people who attempt it and complete.
Yeah.
So
But the infrasound thing is tantalizing. Sorry, Chris.
So I don't know the structure of their country, but why don't they put anybody at that forest to try to prevent suicide? Like, I don't know if they have any advocate groups or anything like that. Why don't they put people there? I couldn't find anything on that. Why don't they actually put people there around the physical year for them to try to combat some of these suicides, or they have bigger things to accomplish?
Part of it is 14 square miles.
I
And
can see
so
that.
there's a lot of access points. Like I said, most people aren't going to the tourist parking lot, parking and then hiking in from that point. I'll bring up, see if I can bring up a image here to kind of show people what. Oh yeah, this is going to be a really easy image for everybody to see. So just everybody get out your magnifying glasses. Here's your image for ants. All right, as you can see, this little tiny picture here that looks like basically a nipple on green. Yeah, you got there's if you look to the northwest section, here's this little part where I got the cursor going right here. That's where the forest is located. And I'll see if I can find a better image, because that one was pretty pathetic. Here we go. I got one. So yeah, this is kind of there we go. So you can see down around here, this area, like I said, all here, this is that forest area. And so there's quite a vast area to cover. And so it's one of those, because I know some of the things, that is something that's discussed a lot of time, like what Chris brought up, is why isn't this looked at, stopped? Why don't they just have, somebody posted like guard, hey, take this card, you need to go home, find another way. No, it's because, yeah, they're waiting there at the tourist area, but somebody's hiking in with their last things, and they set up their little spot, basically, because I think if I've seen some photos, they even have a lot. I mean, you can tell that there was meditation, that they were basically praying to the ancestors. They were basically preparing themselves for the passing. And so I don't want to glorify it, but in a way I understand it. It's like you said, if I'm terminal, like they said, there's no way to do it. Do you find yourself like you come to peace with all your family, friends, and then you go for that hike? And you just, so that way everybody remembers you, me as I am right now, not as this shriveled up, dying person in a hospital bed that everybody, and that's the last memory. No, you remember what you're seeing right now, and that's your memory. And you're like, Craig went off to the forest. That's, so.
And that's what we have to keep in mind, that every culture is different. So that could account, that absolutely could account for some of it. But moving on from the forest, I love an ancient culture where, like, I look, especially in Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, I look at werewolves, I look at vampires. And each country, each language has their name for these things. But when you start diving down into ghost, shapeshifters, and demons in Japan, it's like all the different names for a snowflake in the frozen north, right? There's so many different categories, and they're so specific. that you know that this is just so well thought about, so well cataloged, so part of the culture that as a paranormal investigator in America, that gives me hope that someday we'll get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where all the flash and bang and portals to hell and all the nonsense and I'm going to exorcise this demon goes away. And we simply say, let's catalog this scientifically. You know, we do a much better job with cryptids. Look at that. That's a plethora of demons, ghosts, and shapeshifters.
Yep. So I thought that was almost like you brought it up. I was like, I had that photo in reserve and I thought about it. I was just like, oh my God, I got that picture. Somebody painted that. And that kind of sums it up. It's like the samurai and it shows all the different versions. The only thing that's missing is Godzilla. You know, that's the only thing that is not in the screen.
That's a topic for another time.
But I don't know if anybody know during their research on the forest, there's very little wildlife, and it didn't go into great detail. Why is there very little wildlife here? Is the wildlife affected by the hauntings?
Go
ahead, Craig.
No, I was gonna say I know they've got they've got squirrels, they've got there's a black Asian black bear. You know, they've got
very little wildlife.
You know, they got some birds, and I think I'm trying to think if there's a deer. I mean, it's one of those. It's the type of thing too. It's just, it could also be the fact that there's so many people there. It's a high tourist area. So larger animals are going to kind of avoid the area because it's not, you know, so you'll have a lot of smaller ones, but you're not, I mean, that could be why there's not a bigger selection. It's just because they're so prevalent with people hiking and taking tours in there.
The infrasound could play a role. And it's interesting about paranormal places. You can go in a place that's very rich with wildlife, and when a paranormal event is taking place, when it feels like John Keel's zone of fear, it's silent. The animals, the birds, they're gone, they're silent, they're hidden. It's a very odd thing. So it could, you know, that could account for it as well.
That was a very good answer. That's the answer I was looking for.
Okay, well, happy to accommodate. No, I think we have to take that. I think we have to take. You know, I've had colleagues who said we were driving, you know, outside of Area 51. We were on the alien highway or whatever they call it, the UFO highway, and there was this herd of deer in the fog, and all of a sudden something spooked them and they were just gone. Or they stand. You know, could you imagine 25, 30 deer just standing stock still for 10, 15 minutes? Not moving a muscle, not blinking, not because when those energies do come in, of course, they're very sensitive to them.
That's what I was thinking. That's why I was like, it says very little wildlife. So, I mean, if there's phenomenons going on all the time there, you're right. The wildlife would never come back. You know, somebody commits suicide, their soul goes wherever, and, you know, they're walking through and they go away. The next person killed themselves.
Yeah, it's an interesting place, and you have to be delicate, just like when you're talking about a prison or mental institution. There's a lot of suffering that has caused this phenomenon. So we don't want to be all how very interesting, because it's potentially disrespectful. But the geography, the energy. Usually those two things are tied, and then the long reputation. Something's definitely going on there.
Well, you can see too. It's just I'll bring up that image again. You know, that I had there almost at the beginning. You can see it's not a wide open forest. It's so dense when you see there. So that's why a lot of people can go out there and not even be discovered for a long time. It's not very common to find a full corpse, you know, for somebody that's passed on. A lot of times people are so either fully decomposed, it's just skeletons, just bones, because they've been in there so long. Because as you can see, just even in this image, there's not paths that you can just jump off and and go all over the place. It's really easy to, you know.
So let me give you another twist. Say there is a serial killer that is hanging these people? Who said they commit suicide? I mean, there's nobody actually seen anybody hang themselves there. They know their deaths are happening, but let's just
it'd be a
say
pretty prevalent serial killer then, because like I said, this is pretty well known for suicides because they leave notes and everything behind.
okay. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe a serial
Yeah.
killer's writing the notes. You know, I mean, if you want to get rid of somebody, you take them to the haunted forest and hang them and write a note that said, "I killed myself." I mean,
From a writer of thrillers and horror, I tip my hat to you, sir. I would write that.
Yeah.
And make $1 million. That's you don't know. But Craig brings up a host of good points too. So
Craig is my party stopper. I
Yeah,
say
that's
stop,
right.
I'm like, stop,
Well, it's like,
dead.
no, I get the fascination. I go, is there a possibility? Absolutely. I mean, because it'd be the perfect place to dump a body, because who would know the difference? You know, it's like you strangle somebody and drop them off in the woods. You know, they're gonna be like, oh, another suicide. You know, but the whole incense setup, you know, basically miniature temple with you know, just the offerings. That's quite an elaborate cover for a serial killer to set up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, and so that would be, you know, and then yeah, it's you know, it's like you said, but is there a possibility? Oh, absolutely. That
yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah,
like that.
I think Mona's right. If
Mhm.
if any serial killer isn't taking advantage of it, that would be surprising as
It's
well.
like it's like the desert outside of Vegas. You might disappear. You know.
Yeah.
You know, you might be out. You know, you might go out for a ride and you don't come back. I mean, what you know, things happen. You know, it's just,
you know, sometimes people are the worst ghosts and demons. You know what I mean? So, where do you want to go, guys?
well, let's kind of head on into.
Yeah.
So basically, like, I'll start here. There's just you know, like I said, I'm going to butcher the name. You know, FYI for everybody. But Onryo is a ghost. It's a type of the yurei. Just bear with me. You know, it's the traditional Japanese belief, you know, in literature that, you know, that this is the one where a ghost is able to interact with the physical world. And the Onryo are believed to be capable of causing harm to the living, ailing or killing its enemies, or even causing a natural disaster, you know, typhoons, you know, tsunamis, to redress the wrongs that it faced during while it was alive. Some of these popular culture, just for people that stick out, would be, I think it's Juon from The Grudge.
Mm-hmm.
That was one, and also Sadako Yamamura from The Ring.
Yeah,
these are some real prevalent ones that people, you know, when you say these things, The Grudge, The Ring, you know, boom, you know, I put it in the promo, the girl with the long hair coming out of the well, you know, that's what these, you know, some of these ones. And so, I mean, I'll let you go from there. It's just, but these are some of the ones, like I said, that the jump off point where most people know this, but we'll get into a lot that there's a lot of ones that people aren't going to be as familiar with.
Right. This is, if there's a ghost archetype, this is it. In America, we call them the woman in white. Right? Mm-hmm. She's on the side of the road, whatever. She gets in the car and there's been a wrong. She's been murdered. Someone close to her has been murdered. Richard Matheson did it. And then there was the Kevin Bacon movie, Stir of Echoes. The young girl is murdered. Her body is not at rest. And she finds a likely target to communicate with, right? The whole writing in the mirror, all that kind of stuff. So this is the one that correlates closely to American culture, to British culture, the idea of this vengeful ghost. So we can help them. That's a possibility at this level of haunting in Japanese culture. We can help them right the wrong. And that's what Tanya and I do as a paranormal investigation team. Really, we're mitigators. So we try to work with the living and the dead to rectify things. We had an interesting house where the guy buys the house. He buys it with an estate sale. He buys all the furniture, you know, young bachelor, and there's knocking. There's knocking constantly in his bedroom. He's taking sleeping pills. He's putting in earplugs. He's got this knocking. Well, it turns out through Tanya's mediumship, and we were able to sort of follow a paper trail. It was an interesting case last year. There was a stack of letters tied with a ribbon, love letters, that had been stored in that dresser. They were no longer in the dresser. And the woman who owned the house and owned the dresser wanted those letters, and she wasn't getting them. So a mitigation had to go there. So the knocking got worse for a little while as she got frustrated, and that happens. And Tanya and I warned the client of that. We said, look, sometimes these things get worse instead of better. When they know we're around, we're trying to help them. But think about it. If you're trying to communicate, okay, with your spouse, with your child, with a coworker, and they're just not getting it, what happens? You get frustrated. You get angry. It's a spike of energy. Well, for a spirit, that spike of energy leads to knocks, bangs, shaking, things falling off the walls. We had some clients that had some ghosts with some issues. And after we did our initial investigation and clearing, they were pissed off. And in the middle of the night, they knocked a bunch of things off the walls.
Nice.
Yeah, again, like a kid. You reprimand a kid, you're on to it, right? Your kid comes home in the middle of the night. They think they're being clever. You're on them. They're going to go to their room. They're going to slam the door, and they're going to throw some stuff around.
Yep.
So I think that level of yurei, I guess I'm going to say yurei.
Yeah, we'll go with yurei. I like that.
I'm sure my daughter Jolie will correct me after the show if I'm wrong. But the yurei, again, correlations 2 a.m. to 2:30. Here it's 3:30 is the hour of the wolf, the witching hour. Middle of the night, the veil is thinnest. I think what really it is, we're in a liminal zone. We're in a half waking, half sleeping state. Our consciousness is somewhat repressed. So our subconscious, our sensing systems, our soul, whatever you want to call it, is at a heightened, right? Because we got 1 foot in the dream world, parallel dimensions, all of that.
Yeah, I like that.
So that felt very familiar to me. And they're bound to specific locations. Some ghosts are, some ghosts aren't. They're tied to an object. Tomorrow night on Into the Outer Realms, we're doing a show on haunted objects. So they could be attached to an object. Three Beards beard oil. A little.
Speaking of Outer Realms,
commercial.
Bathworks, yes, you know.
Oh yeah.
Shameless plugs. Yeah.
So
anyway.
Yeah, but no baths tomorrow night. We're just doing the show Into the Outer Realms. But anyway, haunted objects. And it could go from as small as a ring or something like that, all the way up to a fireplace, a whole house, a whole land, or a whole forest. Right. So when you start to get into the jinn, and there is a Japanese form when we move to the demons, there is a Japanese form of jinn. I was really interested to see that. Usually talk about the Quran, usually talk about the Muslim faith, Islam. As far as jinn, we've corrupted the name into genie, you know, the genie in the bottle. But there's a Japanese version. But so the yurei, which is the overarching, and like you said, the unreal, the vengeful ghost. That's one that we're all very familiar with in our culture. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of when I found too. It's in. I mentioned it prior. It was the myth of Oiwa, you know, and that was. And I'll show some photos here real quick, just so people know who we're talking about.
While he finds the photos, for your podcast tomorrow, look up the lady who bought a ring from an estate sale. It was a really big story, and she was getting real sick and real sick. She went to a psychic, and they said it was a ring, and it had a lot of bad energy tied to it, and she got rid of it, and then her health went back. I mean, she was like gravely ill behind this ring that she bought from an estate sale.
Yeah, rings, gems, there are cursed diamonds that came from India during the British Empire. Whoever has these like diamonds of India, they die, terrible things happen to them. We are going to talk about some rings tomorrow night. Yeah, it's powerful. You know, I'm wearing my Templar ring tonight, but you know, it's a circle and that has its own power and it's made out of conductive materials. That's a great point. Look at that.
Yeah, and these are a couple of images, you know, the different ones. And then this is basically the story begins that Oiwa was a loving, devoted wife to Tamiya Lemon. He was an unscrupulous Ronin, you know, which wandering samurai, who murders Oiwa's father after he discovers Lemon's deeds. You know, she trusted her husband, believing when he comforted her, you know, promised he would find her father's murderer. Well, no longer as a samurai, Lemon was forced to become an oil paper umbrella maker in order to support his now young pregnant wife. Under this circumstance, and excuse me, becoming bored with his marriage, Lemon started feeling resentful of her, whom, you know, he had once loved. Well, being influenced by his wealthy neighbor, whose granddaughter was in love with him, he murdered her after the neighbor considered a marriage between Lemon and his granddaughter. And so Lemon would become rich, and Lemon poisoned Oiwa, but failed as the poison disfigured, but did not kill her. However, she died after eventual realization of her husband's true intentions. So Oiwa's faithful servant discovered and was murdered as well. So Lemon threw both corpses into a river and went to marry the neighbor's granddaughter. At the ceremony, as he lifted his new bride's veil, Lemon saw Oiwa's disfigured face, you know, beheading her and consequently his bride. So he ends up killing his new bride, thinking it was his estranged, you know, now murdered wife. So Kohi's ghost also tricked him, causing Lemon to murder his father-in-law. So after being pursued by Oiwa's vengeful ghost, Lemon was murdered by her brother, avenging his deeds. And so, according to this legend, this a curse accompanies this story, and those, you know, and those it said, and those who retell it, you know, verbatim, you know, are said to meet, you know, other things. So that's what I said. So I may or may not have embellished, you know, and changed it up, you know, but no, it's. I don't feel like I'm tonight. Yeah, I don't feel like Bloody Mary. I'm going to look in the mirror and I'm going to see Oiwa.
No, as long as you speak the stories with honor, that's another thing. We don't really use ghost stories in our culture to sort of educate, and we use them for entertainment. We use them for horror. Well, hold on. Let me hold that thought. I was thinking, you know, in England, there's Sweeney Todd, and in Native American cultures, there's the gambler, and there are these other spirits that, you know, you have to watch what you do if you don't. I think Chris Lapaka Kapanui.
Yes.
The stories of Hawaii, and especially in his short stories, you have the same kind of vengeful. They're very smart. They're able to trick you. But there's another layer of this too. If a Japanese woman gets angry, so his wife, she wouldn't even have to die. They can bilocate, they can put their image on someone else. That's scary as hell. They're not a ghost, they're still alive. This is just a pissed off woman who now has supernatural powers to fix things.
Yeah,
mine got supernatural powers.
I know, that's the same thing I'm thinking. My wife does have supernatural powers, so I don't watch. So I watch. But yeah, that's interesting. And burials are really, really important, right? You have to do the rites correctly. If you deny the rites, they'll come back. So sometimes there needs to be a burial. Oh, look who it is. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Yep.
Yeah,
Miss Tanya just said, "Hell hath no fury." Amen, wife.
I mean, this is a little deviation, but sometime we'll have to talk about it. Like the culture of the sin eater. That is just a
the sin eater.
That is one.
Was a good...
Yeah, what was that? Last year, I'd never heard of it before, and it was just like, I'm like, wait, what? You know,
they put bread on the dead people.
Yeah, so we'll have to do like a short one, you know, about that. So,
the sin eater is scary as hell. There's a good movie with Heath Ledger. Rest in peace, Heath Ledger. That's scary as hell, where he's a sin eater. That's what he does. That's
Yep.
his job. Yeah, I mean, this stuff could be really frightening. I think in a good way, because we have to be careful and we're not alone. And I'm just looking down this list here. There's the Ubume, a mother ghost who died in childbirth or died leaving young children behind.
Mhm.
They come back to care for their children, to look over them.
I can
Yep.
see
And
that.
in our culture, it's very big with grandma coming back, like little lights over the crib and so on and so forth. So, Tanya and I, not everything's a demon, man. I mean, those things exist, and we're going to talk about them tonight. They're scary as hell, but there are also positive, benevolent spirits who come in and look. We have some clients who are very sensitive to these kinds of things, and they'll come to us and they'll go, something is in. Oh, guys, I just had this giant beetle bug land on my computer screen.
Oh my God.
We're summoning stuff now.
Well,
Radio
and like,
people, you're glad you don't see this.
yeah,
Holy
see what
mackerel.
happens when you start saying, Candyman there,
Yeah. So now
Yeah.
we're summoning up creatures from
Well,
beyond.
you're as we're kind of a spinoff a little bit on what you were just talking about,
Yeah.
that one. I think it's Abasuti. It's a practice of abandoning the elderly.
Yeah, not a good thing.
Yeah, and so what this does is it's a practice of sinicide in Japan, whereby they take the infirm or elderly relative and they carry him to the mountain or some other remote, desolate place, the Aokigahara Forest type thing, and they leave him out there, so they can't fend for themselves and they pass away. Well, you think in these traditions of these ghosts, what is that going to do to somebody, especially because then, right there away, you have the potential for the vengeful spirit who wants, for the family that abandoned them, that didn't care for them, that just dumped them in the forest. And so, and so you could see where so it's kind of like they just played right on that, the one for the old woman, because that's the same thing. It's just that's also the abandonment of them.
Yeah, you have to be careful. If anybody's interested, it's Ikiryo or Ikio. So Ikiryo or Ikio. It's almost like a tulpa. It's almost like a tulpa that comes out of the person and it's made manifest. But it's not a distinct personality, or, there's the story of Dion Fortune got so angry. Somebody, she had a dispute over a book or publishing, and she went to bed and she was so angry. And Fenrir, the Norse wolf, she actually saw it manifest as an expression of her anger. This is an imprint of your energy that can go out and do stuff. Yeah, like the Grudge, Chassis says. Yeah. Oh, so I was starting to say before the giant bug landed on my computer. They'll say, this isn't grandma. This isn't my dad. The dog is spooked. This is something else.
Yes.
So there are differentiations in the energy of these things. And so I don't know. It's going so fast as we're wrapping up hauntings before we move to demons and stuff.
It is.
I was looking at some famous locations that are said to be haunted. There's Himeji Castle and, of course, Aokigahara. So it is thought to be full of these ghosts. And if these ghosts are unresolved ghosts that are another thing, we talk about suicide. Suicide, I used to have a sort of romanticism with suicide when I was younger. It could be very noble under certain circumstances, blah, 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 blah. But as we have dealt with either clients who are being haunted by a suicide, or something similar like that, seems to be a definite purgatory for suicide. It seems to be about a year where they're gone, but then they're back, and they're confused, they're upset, they're looking for answers. It's a very hard haunting to mitigate. And that scares the hell out of me.
Can you just tell them the truth and they go away, or no? It's a hard mitigation. Like, look, you killed yourself. What do you want me to tell you?
Well, no, that's not how Tanya and I handle anything. But another thing too, Chris, is a suicide is traumatic. It often leads to, if you take pills or whatever, there may be brain damage. If it's a gunshot wound, if it's a hanging, you've cut off your air and you've done brain damage. So what we found is they're confused. They're cognitively impaired. So when we say people take their personality with them to the other side, at least in the short term, because there seem to be different levels. But when you're in those early stages of passing over, when you are a ghost, if you were an angry asshole, that's what you're going to be. If you were kind and generous and benevolent, that's what you are. But if we crossed over a woman with dementia. This woman was waking these two boys up in the middle of the night. Their mom and dad were going through a divorce. Their mom moved with them back into a house that was very haunted. And this woman had dementia. Tanya crossed her over through a mirror, and the boys were able to sleep. They were in sleep studies. One of the boys was heavily medicated. So that was a happy ending. That was a good story. So it's Tanya says it has to do with the emotional state when they pass.
Yeah.
So,
now, did you happen to find anything on the Joruguma or Jorugumo?
Is that a ghost or a demon?
It's kind of a cross a little bit, because I'll show a picture of it. You got to see the image for people here, so people can see it, because I'll make it a little funnier as I read it. I got kind of a chuckle out of it. You can see a samurai fighting a giant spider in this image.
Oh, wow.
And so here's the spider. So what this is translated into English. The Jorogumo means woman spider.
Mm-hmm.
So, however, the kanji means it could also mean entangling bride or whore spider, which I laughed about that one right there.
See, you laughed. It freaked me out so much I didn't put it in my research.
Yeah, and so
I was like, "Oh hell no! I'm not even talking about any."
Yeah,
kind
this
of
is they're cunning
spider woman.
Yeah, they basically think of it like a succubus. This is like a Japanese version of like a succubus,
Yes.
and that's where I said this is kind of a cross into the demons. They are cunning and appear as seductive young women, and they feed on young men who fall for their tricks, trapping them in their webs and devouring them slowly. And the legend is based on the real golden orb weaver spider. But when the spider reaches 400 years old, she will transform into a Jorogumo and start preying on humans. Turning herself into a beautiful maiden to actually, to bring in the young men. And so so that picture is like a young warrior encounters a beautiful woman, realizing she is, he strikes her with a sword and she flees to the attic. There they find a dead spider, and it's surrounded by decaying bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, it's pretty crazy, and that's where I said there's a kind of a nice, thing to where you go into the demons, the oni.
Yep. We all dated a woman like that in college. Let's be honest. Yeah, what's very similar to that though, the kitsune, right? Mm-hmm. The fox. So that's very interesting. Japanese word for fox, kitsune. Shapeshifters, mischief causers. They take control of women by entering through their fingernails or their breasts. They live a long time, very intelligent, powerful magic. Some are good, some are bad. That's a prevalent theme, right? Same as with jinn and all that manner of thing. Some have 9 tails. And after they reach 1,000 years old and they gain or earn their nice tail through their actions, they become golden heavenly foxes. And that is, if anybody did you guys see Lovecraft Country? It was an HBO.
Yeah, I don't
show.
think
It was interesting. It was about oppression of African Americans in the South during the 1950s. It was a very brutal time where cops would pull you over, beat the hell out of you, put you in a jail for days. But one of the guys gets involved. It's called a kumiho. And I think it may be Korean if I remember correctly, but it might be Japanese. But it's a little bit of that succubus thing too, Craig. Like the way that she gets her tails and sort of ascends. I think she has to sleep with 99 men, but I mean the tail comes out like a scorpion and like punctures them. All these arms and tails and craziness come out and they become a shriveled husk. Definitely didn't date anyone like that in college, thank goodness. So but that's the kitsune, which is very interesting.
Yeah, this is one because originally it started on this, and this is one of those that's really pretty cool because it's just so like you said, that I think the shape changing demons was the one that was the coolest one for me. And that I think I'll get your guys' take on this, Joe and Chris. So it's the bakemono, I think is how you say it, which bakemono. These are the shape changing demons who often take the form of animals like cats, who are generally destructive. But for me, this is one of those where, whether it's like, because you talk about the parallels and patterns, some of the connections to the Western culture, the skinwalker, you have these ones right here. And that's what I took is like, this is almost like the Japanese version of the skinwalker. This is something that can take the shape of something, transform itself, that this is your classic shapeshifter. But I've often wondered, is this also like that cultural go-to that every culture's got, that the boogeyman, this something, just that thing that you've got something to explain, that you can't explain. And so you just, it's like the junk drawer of a cryptid. You like, this is the boogeyman. This is this is that bakemono. This is something, because I can't explain it, but it's definitely, it wasn't natural. So boom, that's what it has to be.
I found a different name for that, and it's the Yōkai. So the Yōkai is the embodiment. Imagine this. This is how specific they get. This is a Japanese explanation or conception of Keel's zone of fear. This was crazy. When a yokai is there, it's the embodiment of a moment. It's a feeling of dread, of bewilderment, of awe and wonder over an extraordinary event. It's a strange sound, a peculiar scent that demands an explanation, an ineffable phenomenon explained only by a supernatural entity. It has its own category. That's where you go into a haunted place. You go into a haunted forest. You go into a haunted asylum. And you're in a place and you say, I don't know what the hell is here with me, but I can sense it. I can smell it. I can feel it. I can hear it. And I don't know what it is. The Japanese say it's the yokai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of because people are talking, I think it was Carlito was the deal with the myth of the Japanese women that were half dragon, or snake. I'm like, yeah, that's one that's prevalent, like in the art, of the woman's head on the body of a snake.
Yeah.
The other one, the Kuchisaki Onna, which is the lady of the cut mouth. Did you look into this one? This one, I'll share this picture real quick so everybody kind of has an idea. Basically, what this story is about, just kind of give you an idea, is that this creature will come to your door, so everybody can see this picture. So what the story of this is this is an urban legend that kind of started back about 60s, 70s, that this Yūrei appears wearing a mask or surgeon's mask, comes to the door and asks you if they're beautiful. And so if you answer yes, she removes the mask to reveal this, her mouth that's cut, gashed from ear to ear, and she may return to ask if she's beautiful. You can escape with a neutral response, such as you look good, or by offering candy. However, if you, upon seeing the cut mouth, you answer that she looks beautiful, she will cut your own mouth so you now look like her.
Yeah. I took her to the junior cotillion. Not good. Craig, why did you have to bring that?
I know.
That's like one of those lost photos they bring up on the talk shows.
That's right.
I want to go back to the snake for a second.
Yeah.
women and snakes, that's interesting and often misinterpreted. You know, you have Lilith with the snake around her, right? Adam's first wife before Eve, who was a little more earthy and more aggressive, less passive. Sophia, who's the mother of Jaldabaoth, who's the dragon. She's the mother of wisdom. You know, even you know, Lucifer crawling through the jungle. To me, and in my fiction writing, I write about it. What better way to get through a thick jungle undergrowth than to turn into a serpent? And they deliver wisdom. So I saw the Japanese snake woman, but there's only a finite amount of time. It was another one I didn't land on, but I would be curious. I mean, even I'm researching the Garuda and other demons for and deities for the Mothman play that I'm writing. And because Mothman may have been a form of a Garuda. And there are these snakes that were thought to be malevolent, but then they become deities almost. There's a Japanese demon like that, the Tengu, right? So the Tengu, we were doing a show. Tanya and I were on Coast to Coast AM, with Richard Serrett about a year and a half ago. And we were talking about our book, Roommates from Beyond, How to Live in a Haunted Home. And Tanya and I were saying what we usually say, about 90% of what we encounter is benevolent, misunderstood, unfinished business, certainly not a demon. It may be an AH of a human, but they're human. And this guy called up and he proceeded to argue. And he said, oh, by the way, first of all, you got it flipped. Only 10% of these things are benevolent. And my mom is being possessed and having sex in her apartment in Boston with a Tengu. So that's very interesting.
Wow.
So, yeah. So the Tengu can be seen as a demon or an omen of war in Buddhism. Some of them are bad. Some of them are good. A lot of them. So if you look at Japanese mythology, demonology, if you see they sort of look like a bird person with a red beak, anthropomorphized, then you're talking about a Tengu. That's what the Tengu. Sometimes they hold a fan made of feathers and they can summon powerful winds. So definitely supernatural. And Buddhism seems to have a real problem with them. They carry off monks. They throw them in remote places. So there seems to be, between the Tengu and the Buddhists, there seems to be.
It's funny that you said that. And that was the craziest thing. I was just getting ready to share this image.
Oh,
and it's a Buddhist monk fighting a Tengu.
Yeah.
That's crazy that you just brought that. I was like, yep, there it is.
Yeah, that's very, very prevalent. And a Tengu is also capable of possessing a woman to seduce holy men, rob temples, and then they also disguise themselves as false priests. So these Tengu really want to undo the whole Buddhist vibe, right? So they're a little bit Vikings and they're a little bit incubus. They're raiding temples and they're throwing monks, in deserts and mountains and all this stuff. But in some circles, they're considered deities and defenders of forests, which I find very interesting, considering Aokigahara. And
then we didn't go over Yuki Onna.
No, go ahead.
Because that's one of the most famous legends, too, and that's the Lady of the Snow. You kind of mentioned, the snow a little bit, but she's a tall, beautiful woman who appears only during snowstorms, and a lot of different versions of the story, but they have her appearing nude in some of them, and others wearing a long kimono. But times she has legs, other times she does not, but she never leaves traces of her movements across the snow. A glance from her can cripple those, can cripple you if you see it. She'll draw the life from you through your mouth. So this is one of those kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean. It's like never leaves any survivors. Where do the stories come from? Right. Yeah. It's one of those. It's the famous legend, but it's like it sounds like she doesn't leave survivors, but yet there's plenty of people describing the encounter. It's like you don't have a lot of people coming back. Yeah, you don't have a lot of people coming back crippled or have dead in the snowstorm, from some mysterious death.
Yeah. And so correlations, parallels, and patterns. So you have the Snow Queen, in European mythology, right? And then you have the Cailleach, which is a fascinating Scottish character. I've put her in my pirate stories. Again, only shows up in the winter, and some people will see as benevolent, and some people see as malevolent. But do we have some time still?
Oh yeah, keep going. Yep.
Okay. There's three that I found very, very interesting. The Ningyo. So the Ningyo is an enchanting songstress, which makes me think of the sirens, right? Singing the sailors and all that. They're fish-like. These are not your grandma's mermaids at all. They have golden scales. They have long fingers and sharp talons. So you're already getting an idea of this human-fish hybrid with these things. Some fishermen, or in some lore, they believe, hey, if you catch one of these things and you eat it, you'll become immortal. Well, if you don't catch it, you're going to pay the price. So maybe best to just leave these things alone, because they can make an entire village go away with one tidal wave.
Wow.
That's crazy.
So that's interesting. That's what I was talking about, like the levity of cultural stories in any culture but ours. It's like, oh, you want to live forever? Go and try and get a Ningyo. But if you don't get the Ningyo, you might wipe out your entire village.
The way you said it.
What do? I guess I leave the Ningyo alone. Let's hope so.
Now that's if I'm not mistaken, isn't that the one that they kind of consider like the siren? It's like their version of the siren, the mermaid, because here's an image of it too.
Yeah, there. With the talons, there she is. All of that, right? And she's bringing the tidal wave because someone probably tried to catch her. And now she's going to wipe out the entire village. So if Bill goes, oh, I'm going Ningyo fishing this weekend, like move to another town.
So maybe you just don't say it, and maybe you just go out there and hopefully you can catch one.
Hey, Dave. Brother Dave.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.
Don't tell anybody you're going to do it. But yet, though, Chris, in our culture, you got all these guys who log on to Facebook Live. We're going to exorcise our third demon in our town of 2,000 people this week. Don't announce. Just go do your thing, man. Just go do your thing and tread lightly. Siren Z people, right? That's bad news. You try to eat them, they eat you.
Yes.
Or else pizza will send out for you. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
That's awesome.
Here's another interesting one, unless you got one.
No.
This is so fascinating to me. The Zashiki Warashi. And the Zashiki Warashi are sort of like our house elves or our house fairies. So when Tanya and I built our house on 3 acres in a holler in West Virginia in 2009, the first year and a half, whenever I had to go to a meeting, my keys went missing. I had this collection of bottle caps. One of the bottle caps would go missing. It was down in my unfinished basement, so there was a cover of dust on everything, from walking on the first floor. So you could see the imprint of where that bottle cap was. Sometime within a week, the bottle cap would come back, and it would be just a little off in the circle. Now, is it a possibility that was one of my 3 malicious kids? No, I love my kids. They're great. We can't discount that someone was funning with me. But it's that kind of thing. They take your phone. They'll take your glasses. They'll take your keys. They're mischievous pranksters. Sometimes they look like little kids. That's why I say they're like house elf kind of thing. But if you treat them nicely, if you treat them with respect, they'll bring great fortune to your house. You're supposed to leave food and drink out for them at night.
Altar, yeah.
Yeah, in the holler, we had fairy lights in our house. People would see them. And we had a Shawnee elder come to our house. And he was sitting in our living room. We didn't say anything to him. It's not like, oh, yeah, come into our house, sit down in the living room, and you may see fairies running around. And about an hour into a conversation, he just stopped. And he said, you have little people running around right there. And he pointed to exactly where it was. We would always leave food and drink out for them. And when we did sweat lodge on our property with the Lakota, same thing. We would leave out food and drink. So major correlations, they're great. And if they disappear from your house because you weren't treating them well, you're in trouble.
That sounds similar to every I guess every culture, not I guess, but every culture has their own deities. That sound like a Chosi. I don't know. You ever heard of Chosi? He plays tricks on you. It's actually a part of the Santos, Santeria. He plays tricks on you. He likes tobacco. Like he'll make you trip over something. He'll make things go missing. He's just a trickster of that religion.
Yeah, it is. It's very similar. I was excited to see that. You know, some mediums said to me, she's just trying to cool you down. She's just trying to get you to take it easy. Not everything is a house fire. Not everything, stay calm, take care of your business. Because when I moved to West Virginia, I was a Jersey Italian, Jersey Sicilian, and I wanted everything. I was getting my satellite in so I could get back to work, get reconnected with the internet. The guy shows up like 3 hours late, and I flipped out. He's like, dude, relax. It's West Virginia. I'm like, I don't know nothing about no West Virginia. I just want my internet when you say you're going to give me your internet. And this little girl spirit, half fairy, half ghost, like this Zashiki Warashi. She didn't mean me any harm. She always brought the keys back in time for me to go to my meeting, but I wasn't 10 minutes early. And it seemed the calmer I got, the less that she came around and the less she interfered with my stuff. And we had our mentor, Rosemary, came to spend the weekend. And she said, boy, does she laugh at you. When you're running around crazy in your suit trying to find those keys, yelling and cursing in Italian, boy, does she get a kick out of you. So I thought that was very kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those. The more you feed it, the more it's interesting. And it's like, as you got calm, it's like, well, this game isn't as fun anymore.
Yeah, or the purpose was served, right? We went back to purpose. They have a specific purpose. I don't know if Tanya's still watching, but she used to dream of these entities. She would leave out offerings for them. It was that kind of area like the forest where geographically, mineral wise, energetically, historically was so active and would manifest all these different things. I saw a shape-shifting creature go into a parallel dimension. God's honest truth. I watched it happen from my front window. And it was the craziest thing. But portals and all those kinds of things. So does Aokigahara, because of the lava, because of all of those different things. Thank you, Cryptid and Paranormal Kingdom. I appreciate it. Are they bringing a whole bunch of things? And people do get confused. I mean, we don't, just to sort of bring it back.
Well, that was kind of like the little people. Every culture has these stories, and so. Do you think there's any connection to that theory of the hollow earth? That there's something, whether or not we believe that the earth is this actual, donut shape, or, we're not going to get into the multiple theories, but there's also the theory of that there's also, that there is a molten core, there is all this stuff, but there's also this gap, that there's this gap where these things can be, can have it exist under there. Do you think that's where this throughout the world? I mean, we'll go like Tolkien, just his whole thing between dwarves, hobbits. You've got the kappa, from Japan, where it's just these creatures. Everybody seems to have these, and so do you think that there's something to this? This is either just tales that have been passed down from generation to generation, and it no longer exists, or do you think this is something that we're actually still seeing them, but they just know not to interact with us because, we've come to the point now where we can actually harm them, as opposed to them just being able to interact and, without us being able to do much.
I'm gonna try to encapsulate this in 3 or 4 minutes if I can. This is a great question. So I know some very intelligent people, some very responsible investigators who do not discount Hollow Earth. We know that there are UFOs that come out of the sea, that come out of mountains. They've been photographed. They've been cataloged by military people. Why is it that cops and military people and pilots, they're credible witnesses and Joe Schmo? But that's our culture. But anyway, but those people who we consider highly, highly, highly credible people have photographed these things, filmed them, seen them. They got to be coming out of someplace. It correlates with the old fairy lore, where the fairies would come out of a side of a mountain. They would come out of a hill. I know in my spiritual training, to go down into the subconscious, you go into a fairy door in the side of a hill and you go deep underground. And that's where these things are. I also think too, dragons and all these different mythological creatures, chimeras, different hybrids. I'm going to follow you on the Facebook. Thank you. All these different things probably came from somewhere. I'm a writer and I can make things up, but the best things that I channel, the richest things that I channel, feel more like memories. They feel more like ancestral DNA knowledge. So I think we have to account for the possibility that, yeah, these things exist. Then you put in parallel dimensions, portals. So that brings us to the last thing I wanted to talk about as far as the Japanese, the Aijin, which sound very much like the Jin. These are people from what is called a place called Yōkai, a world beyond our own, right? So you got Hyperia, you have all these different, the fairy kingdoms all have names. Magonia is a name for the fairy world. So here's another parallel. They are outsiders who have crossed the boundary between two worlds, often to complete a task. Hey, if you're a gamer, if you're a D&Der, it's all about the quest. It's all about crossing into the liminal zone. All of our mythologies are about that. That has to come from somewhere. Jung talked about the collective unconscious. I think I'm doing pretty good, 3 or 4 minutes. So all these things figure in, and I think we're really silly. So I heard something, Craig, I don't know if I messaged you about this where I read it, but it was the processing of iron, the cultivating of salt, that made it harder for these things to interact with humans because, our bedroom is heavily warded because of the work we do with salt and iron. It's an energetic thing. It's It's not voodoo. It's not really a cult. It's energy. It's chemistry. So we have to be careful. I think disrespecting your elders is dangerous. I think if there's a haunting on your property and you're disrespectful to it and starts to make your life hell, you're party to that. Yeah. I'm already being called a preacher here, so I gotta back down a little.
No. That's I think that's a good compliment there. Yeah, you're doing.
I gotta let off the revival brakes here a little, but I, after 12 years of growing up Catholic with saints and transmogrification of water and wine, and people ask us on shows, when did you get into the paranormal? I was born into the paranormal. I'm a Roman Catholic. Saints and bilocation, all this. So we have to be really respectful. And I was kidding about the bug that landed on my thing. But like Craig, like you were saying, sometimes when you talk about these things, I'll have my tourmaline and my St. Michael's medal by the bed tonight when I go to sleep. And I'll burn some incense. So I hope that kind of answered your question.
Yeah.
So you deal with Saint Michael. I carry Saint Michael's sword all the time. It's for protection. I carry the Saint Michael's sword.
Yeah. Saint Michael, Tanya will say that Saint Michael is an intelligent, cohesive being. I more believe, and it's weird because I'm the Catholic and I also write a lot of fantasy stories about archangels. Michael to me is a certain quality of energy that when we call on, it's very helpful. So when Tanya and I get into a bind with a dark entity, we need help crossing someone over who's afraid. The energy of Saint Michael can be, and I don't know, when I hold that tourmaline in one hand and I hold my Saint Michael's medal in another hand, I feel better. I'm not as fearful. So my energy is going up. So is it a placebo, and it's an archetype that's a good placebo? That goes into what you were asking, Craig. Are these things metaphors or are they real? I think it all depends on your mind. Hi, William.
Yeah. And it's kind of like I kind of thinking about that too. It's one of those, where you can manifest reality. So, whether you're religious or not, whether you believe that Jesus Christ died for your sins, or you believe there's a space octopus that is that, you can believe whatever you want. But it's one of those, like I've told people, I go, where you don't make fun of them is like, you could believe that this is a sacred object and that by holding this protects me, this does these things. Some of you are like, Craig, you're an idiot. That's a cough drop you're holding in your hand. But, at some point, does the will, does the, just that manifestation of, saying this is something, that deep down, I feel that this helps protect me, that, in a way, does that manifest into that object,
Right.
this thing. And that's when you have like these metals, these ones, obviously, you could go to any store and buy St. Michael's medal. That doesn't mean that this is a holy relic, but by you actually wearing it, by you actually thinking, concentrating on it, you're imbuing, I believe, to me, it's just you imbue something into that. It's kind of like a talisman. My son was seeing a shadow figure. I grabbed a rock, an ocean rock. I made a necklace for him. I spoke into it. The thing, it just basically created a ward, hung it in his room. He hasn't seen it since.
Yeah.
No, go
Think
ahead.
about that cough drop. I had one because my throat was a little sore and I wanted to do a good job on the show and have a good, clean voice. When your throat is sore, there is no better talisman. There is no better protection. There is no better cure than a cough drop. You know what I mean? So right tool for the right job. I do believe that. It comes up, and it's a conversation for another show. It only goes a little sideways. What I wonder with these things is you hold up a crucifix against a vampire, right?
Yeah.
Now, we're more cynical and clever. We've evolved. The vampire will burst it into flames, or they'll crush it and melt it. They'll burn it into your hand. But in the old days, you held something like that up and the vampire retreated from it. My mind says the vampire has to believe in the power of that object in order for it to have an effect on the object.
Yeah.
I think Anne Rice did a good job with her vampires because they were very religious. They were pretty Catholic. In a lot of, she had that old Catholic guilt, and it manifested in her vampires. So I don't think so. I think what I've learned on this journey in the past 12 years is that it raises your vibration. And that is and two, when you raise your vibration, you can call in St. Michael because you're more aligning with that vibration. So you're going to bring in that energy. So we wandered a little afield from the Japanese, but what I love and what I really loved about the doing this research was how much they've thought about it, how much it imbues their art, their culture, their relationship with the elderly, the relationship with mothers, right? You have a mother who's so committed to her children that if she dies prematurely, she comes back and takes care of those children. That's extremely comforting. That's extremely positive. And I do like that they, there's some things like the Ningyo, and that could be a cautionary tale. But some are good, some are bad. And I love that too. I mean, I hate when I hear a paranormal investigator, a ghost hunter, is going to go into the field and banish that thing. What? Just because the person who owns the house is seeing something that's a little strange and unusual, you're going to go and banish it to hell? That's like, because I have a long beard and an earring, my neighbor thinks I'm a hippie. So they're going to gag me, put me in a truck, drive me to the desert, and drop me in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
I agree. It's one of those, just because you hear a rattle of something and a cupboard door opens up, doesn't mean you have a spawn of Satan that is, that has infested your home. I go, most likely it's the little old man that owned the house before, and he can't figure out where his coffee cup is because you moved him. You don't keep the coffee cups where he keeps the coffee cups, and he's opening the cupboards trying to find his favorite coffee cup, and he's all pissed, and you can't figure out what's going on. It's just, but yeah, you got some overzealous person. I'm going to banish this demon. It's not a demon.
Yeah.
It's an old guy looking for his coffee cup.
And I'll say, did you ask what it wants? I'm not talking to it. Okay, then.
Yep.
Good luck. Good luck, because just like with the Ningyo, if you do a badass job of banishing it, it might come after you. And I'll help you, but I'm not going to have a lot of sympathy for you.
And there's, and kind of, like you said, like, tying it, that does tie into the Japanese culture, because a lot of these stories, when you look into them, they clearly say, if you treat this entity with respect, that harm, usually it doesn't befall that person. Yeah. It's the person that treats it poorly, that, the person that wronged them, stuff like this. But if they just come up to like you and me and do this thing, and we're just like, hey, I don't mean, just like we're reverent to them, they just keep on their merry way. They don't do a thing because you treat them with respect. And it's pretty cool. Yeah.
So last thing, so going back to where we started,
we need to do a story on this.
Aokigahara Forest. I don't think that the ghosts of the dead are luring people to commit suicide in the forest. I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, William, I forget where I put my coffee cup too. Yeah, you'll be the one opening the cupboards in your house.
Yeah. But that was a great point. So, guys, this has been a pleasure, man.
Yeah, and then King, this is actually we may have to have Joey back on to do a show on Jin.
Yes, I write about Jin extensively.
Yeah.
They can be extremely dangerous. A Jin pulled a 5-foot ladder out from under me. The bottom of the ladder came out. I didn't fall off the top of the ladder because we're investigating a case that involved Jin. Jin can be very dangerous, extremely, extremely dangerous. But there are also, as I was reminded a couple weeks ago, I did a solo show on our show, and I was talking about Jin, and someone was quick to say there are benevolent Jin. They have different colors, and they have different gradations. So Jin is a very complicated subject. If you think you've crossed a Jin, get some help, and don't try to summon them. Don't play games. Don't play games with the Jin entity, because some of them hate the human race. We don't belong here. We've usurped their land. They're angry. And like I said, I had a broom. I was cleaning off my roof, and I was cleaning my gutters. This was right after a phone call with a client where we committed to going to his house. The ladder was pulled out from under me. When I landed, that broom was broken in 3 places.
Wow.
And right next to me. So could you imagine if I fell on the broom?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I had some serious bruises, and I was hurting for a couple of weeks. But it was a warning. So they will warn you, but you don't want to be warned in that way.
Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah, that's one of those, don't have to warn me twice. All right, I'm out.
And we might down the road do a Jin, because I've spoken to some military from Afghanistan and Iraq, and there are cataloged cases of frightening things. They go into caves, they go into underground bunkers,
like the Kandahar Giant.
Yeah,
that doesn't exist.
Oh, I wrote about the Kandahar Giant, dude. I heard that on your show. I heard that on your guys' show, and I put it into one of my. It's in the 3rd Cannon in the Quill pirate book.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
There's an ex-Navy Jin hunter. I made a SEAL Team D, and they're Jin hunters in the Middle East, and he tells the story of the Kandahar Giant. That's crazy stuff.
Yeah. Hey, Nicole, welcome. You caught it right at the end.
Yeah. So did a bunch of highly trained special forces guys make up a story about a giant with a spear impaling U.S. special forces? I don't think so.
Yeah.
The idea, it's easier to believe that the giant exists than a group of highly trained, very proud U.S. special forces would make up a story like that.
Decided to come back, and it was a mission that ended up being, classified.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. These military guys have gone on record, and they've talked about Jin meeting them, seeing a thing that sort of has red eyes and shimmering, and all of a sudden there's a black dog sitting 3 feet away from them.
Yep.
And they're holding some pretty serious firepower, and they're scared out of their minds. Those are crazy stories. So yeah, we should do a show on the Jinn, and then everybody ward themselves before they go to sleep.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to do a show on that one because that would be a cool. That'd be a cool topic.
Let's please do that. I love talking about this.
All
Well,
right.
and you and I are doing angels and demons, but we won't have time to focus too much on Jinn. So
Yeah, that's
right on.
But hey, everybody, if you want to support the show and support the gentleman here and his wife who makes the stuff, she helped come up with our signature blend. So now we have this one. It's a nice citrus blend. Lemon, orange bitter, has a little bit of peppermint in there. Just hemp seed, coconut oil, nice tea tree. Really nice one. It needs to be. I said it's for me. I said it's perfect for my beard.
I used it before the show tonight.
Yep. That's
so there you go.
It's one of those, and I really like it, and that's available at Outer Realms Bathworks, and also Etsy shop. That you can go to Etsy and do the same thing. Outer Realms, you can find it there. We'll post links to it. We're also going to share a video that she made. And that was pretty cool. Like I said, I've been a slacker and I haven't got around to sharing that on my page yet. But like I said, it's one of those really enjoyed it. It supports them and us. So everybody check that out and get that as a great gift. But definitely every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time into the Outer Realms with Joey and Tanya. Check them out there on episode 103, I think.
Tomorrow night is episode 103, and Craig is one of our official contributors. So he has contributor status. Yeah. Gives you the keys to the executive washroom.
That's right.
Of course, it's in the Outer Realms, so don't wait till the last minute to use it. But
yeah, it's somewhere out there. I haven't found the door to it yet. Yeah, so we'll get there. Yeah,
we're losing Chris here.
Yeah, he's on mute.
Oh, he lost his.
Yeah, I'm a little. Y'all had me lost on that one, so I was just listening to you ponder along.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things. So check those out. You can follow them. So just follow them on Facebook, YouTube. Joey Madia is the channel on YouTube. Follow there. You can watch them on YouTube there, or you can go to Facebook, Into the Outer Realms, and you can check them out there. Same way, you reach out to Joey and Tanya on Facebook. Check them out there. We also, for us, we're on all social media. So just TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, obviously YouTube, Facebook. We just check us out, follow, subscribe. That helps us out. Comment. Thank you everybody for all the comments in the chat room. I said that really helps, especially like YouTube. YouTube was started to really grow. So that we really appreciate that. Go to redbubble.com/3 Beards Podcast. Check out our merchandise there, or you can go to 3beardspodcast.com itself and just go to the merchandise shop. And it's the same thing there. We are rebroadcast after this gentleman and his wife on Wednesday nights, courtesy of Ron there at ERRT Radio every Wednesday. So once again, just everybody, thank you for watching the show. Really appreciate it. Joey, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. I want to say everybody has a half an hour break, then they can go and watch Michael Carter, who's been on your show a couple of times. Amazing Reverend Carter was on our show for our 100th episode. And then what do you guys have playing tonight? Do you remember?
I think it's the show we had yesterday.
Cool.
Or not yesterday. I mean, last Wednesday. I think it's a replay of that one. So that'll be the Dave Clemens experience. So I think
Chris is way out of the loop. Now you're doing shows on Tuesdays.
There was a show at Tuesday.
It was last Wednesday. So it's
very cool. Thank you guys. It's always an honor. 5 times.
Well, thanks everybody for watching. Like I said, good night.